Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back here with Chappell. And boy, do we have such an amazing treat here today to talk with the man behind Suits, the showrunner, the creator of Suits. Aaron Korsh is here. Aaron, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Chilling.
We're up here. We're up here. We were
Yeah, we
down. We
live
were
life
living
up
life
here.
here.
It was down here.
I love
Yes.
it.
We're lit up.
Yeah.
I love it.
Lit the
I
hell
love
up.
it. Oh, I should have brought my lit up mug.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the other room. Sorry.
Yes. Okay. Well, we are just so excited to talk to you today. We just finished our podcasting of 134 recaps of Suits, and we're getting ready to go into Pearson next. Okay, this is just
Okay.
a little stop down before we keep going on our Suits
Awesome.
journey. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I might be getting a little sick. I might have woken up a little sick today, but I just finished the first half, and the Dallas Cowboys are down 27-7, I think. So I'm doing well because I'm an Eagles fan. So sorry, Dallas. Sorry,
Yes.
not sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we really are so excited to talk to you because of, obviously you are super busy right now, and it's just been a such a nice ride to go through all of this rehash of Suits over these last couple of months. What's this Suits renaissance been like for you?
Um, I mean, it obviously was not expected. I was just living my life and I kind of started to get a sense of it. You know, I would hear from like some woman, a receptionist at a doctor's office, or somebody I went to high school with, or various different people would tell me their brother or their niece or nephew or parents or were starting to become addicted to it. This is kind of before it got on Netflix, and I think people were watching the TikTok, the Harvey Mike interview scene, and it just started to catch on fire. And then Netflix, picked it up and interest in Megan and everything. And then the next thing I know, it's like everybody in the world is watching Suits, and yeah, it was terrific. It's really been fun.
Yeah, Aaron, we saw the Suits cast on the Golden Globes. That
Yeah.
had to be crazy after all this time to be like, yeah, we want Mike Ross and Harvey Specter on here announcing a category. I was thinking, man, this feels like a blast from the past because I watched Suits in the real time, and I actually did not finish it the first way around. So when Rob and I did our rewatch, I got to watch the final season for the first time, and it was really cool watching it. And then like a week later, them being on the Golden Globes, it was so dope. So I
Yeah.
imagine that you should have had a spot up there as well.
Well, no, I don't need to be up on stage, but it was great. Look, I got an email like, I don't know, 3-4 days before the Globes, just letting me know from NBC Universal PR, like they're going to be on the Golden Globes. And I told my wife, and she was like, "Can we go?" And it didn't even occur, I didn't think of that. So I sent a thing. So we did get to go. And we got to sit
Oh,
with them. And to me, that's like, I don't need to be on stage, but it was, it was a crazy night. I mean, it was crazy, magical night. And it turned out an old friend of mine, guy that actually I had my first staff job on a drama, and I've worked for him as a writer's assistant and staff writer. He wrote The Holdovers, and he happened to be at the table next to us. So it was a crazy night. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. How in touch is everybody from the show in terms of like, especially with like it having this whole second life?
Uh, for the most part, we're not like getting dinner once a week or anything, but we're generally speaking in touch, either a phone call or a lunch or a dinner or a text or
Yeah.
whatever it is. We did have. I'm trying to think when it was. It might have been 2 or 3 months ago. I don't remember. I think we were still in the strike, and we had a little reunion with. Not everybody was in town and not everybody could make it, but with a lot of some directors, some cast, some producers, and we had a little dinner, which was, you know, so much fun. So whenever we do see each other, it's a great time. Yeah, and at the Globes, it was the first time I guess I would say I was with. I certainly hadn't seen that group of four,
Mhm.
and it was so much fun.
Yeah, it felt pretty surreal seeing them on stage at the same time, and then like the banter that they have on stage. We're waiting on our your goddams and all your the other suits isms to come out on stage, and it wasn't quite that, but it did remind me of the magic. So it was such a fun sight to see.
Yeah, it was really fun, and we just had a great time. I mean, Gabriel had to get on a plane right after, so he couldn't even come to any parties. So I tried to, and he lives in London, so that's why I never see him, but we'll text and talk once in a while. But so I tried to catch up with him as much as possible in between presenters, and then afterwards, Patrick, Gina, and Sarah and I all went out to some parties, and it was great.
Okay, so for us that we just have gotten to the ending of Suits in the last couple of days and have talked about it. Could we talk with you a little bit about that the ending and how did you arrive to what the ending of the show was going to be?
Sure. I sometimes some of the questions they're like blurry in my brain. But so I don't 100% remember when we came up with, every specific part of the ending, but I know it was pretty early that I think it was pretty early in season 9 that I wanted Harvey to go work with Mike. I'm trying to remember, like, it was like, if you think about Mike's influence on Harvey over the years, Mike has always wanted to do good, and Harvey was not about that. And then I just thought it would be a great symmetry to have Harvey kind of come over to the light side, so to speak. As far as Lewis and Sheila, I don't remember when that popped into our brains. I think it was fairly early on. I mean, I do know the song Viva La Vida. That was like, I think it was in the beginning of the year. I knew that was going to be the final song. I remember telling the editor, Dan Rivetto, like, this is gonna be how the series ends. That might have been week 1 of season 9. And then somewhere along the line, we decided we just wanted to, in general, give a happy ending and give, the people their raises and their promotions to being the be it Alex Williams, Katrina, Samantha, and obviously giving Lewis, letting Lewis run the firm. That's another huge thing, right? I mean, who'd have thought? Would you think when you watched the pilot that Lewis Litt, he was going to get control of the firm, and you were going to root for him and be happy about that? I remember feeling that was a sort of a fitting ending.
Yeah, that's a really good point because Louis Litt is such a polarizing character throughout this entire series. I mean, there are moments where I've gotten a good hate into Louis, but Rob here has always said since the very beginning that this is a one of a time, like all time great character on television. Rob.
I love Louis so much. Aaron, I think that Louis is one of the all time great TV characters, and I think that and not to say anybody else wasn't there, but I think that Rick's performance of Lewis just said was such a range of that he could make you feel anything, and it's sort of like that. I feel like that in my mind, these great characters, it's sort of like you can imagine what they would do in almost any situation, and it's just like so many different fun things that you did with him over the course of the show. I adore Louis Litt.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're all near and dear to me, and I could say, anyone you'd bring up, I would tell you what I love about them, both the actors' portrayal and the character themselves. But the thing about Lewis I love so much is, look, all of the characters have the capability of surprising, I think, the audience, and sometimes they surprise me, like, oh, that is within the bounds of their character. They could go one way or the other, and I could make it work in my head that they might do that on any given day. But Lewis, like, really talk about, like, how he's going to react. You do, but yet you don't. Like, he can really, depending on his mood, right? Like, if someone cuts in front of him in line in the coffee shop that morning, his reaction 3 scenes later to whatever is coming to him is really going to be affected based on his mood going into that. And Rick was just such he was the gift that keeps on giving. His ability to be emotional, angry, funny, stupid. Lewis can be, I don't want to say stupid like intellectually stupid. But in season 9, since you just watched that, when he doesn't understand that Harvey and Donna are telling him, that they are together, and he didn't get it the first, his ability to figure out as an actor, Rick's ability how to do that it's not easy, right? Because he's not a stupid character. So he more played it like he was innocent rather than stupid. And look, he was the gift that kept on giving. Absolutely.
Yeah, even Flashback Lewis, that I felt like that
Baby Lewis.
that could have been its own show. And the actor that you got for young Lewis was just so perfect that both the times you went back to young Lewis, like it was really just incredible.
Yeah, no, I don't believe I ever met him. But the time I loved his flashbacks. I loved him and he really did. What a great Lewis. But when Lewis is, I think it is season 9. When Lewis is sort of doing the flashback and he sort of comes into contact with young Lewis, so to speak.
Yeah.
What a great! I loved that episode.
Yeah, is that one of your standout episodes throughout the series? Because 9 seasons in, you have to have like the ones that stand out. But I'm sure there's 100 and some odd episodes. You don't remember all the greatest hits of Suits, but I know Rob and I have our standouts. We have debated Lewis going in as Harvey with like Harvey hair, pretending to be Mr. Spector. We've debated that. Rob was a lot higher on that episode than I was because I was like, "What the hell is going on here?" But it was definitely like a very Suits specific moment. Do you have any other moments that really stand out to you?
Well, let me just talk about that for a second. So first of all, I had forgotten this. So much goes on in the life of a 9-season show. And, the premise of the show, Mike's Memory, I used to have a memory like Mike's memory, right? But I'm getting older and I might have also, like Mike, smoked, maybe a little bit too much something.
We need to talk about that too, but go ahead.
Yeah, we can talk about that later. But so evidently, one of our writers, Rick Maragi, had come up with that idea and had a card on his office that Lewis wears a Harvey wig. He'd had it for like years, right? And he left the show after season 7. So then they end up pitching me, Lewis, pretends to be Harvey. And I was like, basically, you guys maybe took the two different sides of the argument I was having in my head. I was like, is this too crazy? Is this nuts? But I also was like, it could be the greatest thing ever. So I decided to do it. And I was talking to Rick and telling him we were going to do it. And he's like, that was my idea. Don't you remember? I had that card in my office. So we were laughing about that. So that is a stand-up. So to me, there are favorite episodes, and I never can pick one favorite, right? There's just two. It's too hard for me to, this is in anything. You ask me top 10, basketball players of all time. I hate being, pinned down on things like that. But there are also favorite scenes, right? So when like Lewis pretending to be Harvey is not an entire episode. There was also a great road trip moment with Harvey and Samantha in that episode, which I love. But like, what pops into my head, some of the scenes, look, when Mike says, because I'm afraid, it was like episode 510, Faith, right? And he's trying to, why with the priest and that's a favorite moment of mine. No doubt one of my favorite episodes. Harvey, a lot of Harvey and Lewis stuff over the years, a lot of their flashbacks, but when Lewis puts him on his dictaphone, Harvey saying, "You're the man," that scene it's an all-time favorite of mine. Obviously Mike and Rachel, their 216, culmination of that episode is a great scene. But, even when just random things pop into my head, Mike and Rachel, when Mike is filling out he's like dictating what she should write on her dating profile when they're not going to go out, early season 2. It's such a touching scene. 1,000 different Donna Harvey stuff, even Donna Lewis in the season 1 with the tickets, when she's got to get something out of Lewis and she goes to him and she has those 2 tickets, and a million Donna Lewis at her cubicle scenes. There's, right now I'm brain freezing a little bit on other things, but 1,000 Jessica Lewis moments.
Mm-hmm.
I told my daughter she might join us for a few minutes on this thing. She's 11 and we're in the middle of watching together.
Yeah.
We're on like 803 is I think what we're up to. And she and I both love Jessica and Lewis. Just look at the two of them together on screen, right? Their physicality and how she towers over him, and he comes in with a bunch of bluster, and she just immediately takes the wind out of his sails a million times. So many great scenes with them. Lipschitz Lewis, right?
Yes.
Love him. Some of these are later because we're in the later seasons right now, but there's a million. Travis Tanner, Hardman, all of his scenes. So many great scenes.
Yeah, Aaron, are there a lot of other things that were sort of like from your autobiography that end up in the course of 9 seasons of Suits?
Yes, I mean, so the pilot itself is like there's a lot of things in there that are from. They're not like.
You didn't have a briefcase of weed, did you?
No, they're not factual versions of my life in any way. But I did have an interview in a hotel with a guy named Harvey that I ended up working with, and I felt like a fraud, so I kind of made Mike an actual fraud. I didn't have exactly a friend like Trevor, but I had a friend that was pretty damn close to Trevor.
Uh-oh.
Not in terms of betraying me, but the rest of the things. But more than that, a million different scenes in Suits, if we were to watch them together, would be, it's kind of pouring who I am into the scene. I'll give a couple of examples. One is when you talk about, scenes that stand out. One of the scenes that stands out in my head is when Lewis says, you're cold, I'm warm, right? I'm emotional, you're cold, you're loved, I'm hated, all that stuff. That scene, Lewis fucks up for the billionth time, and Harvey comes in and he says to Lewis, I don't want to keep getting mad at you, but you keep doing the same shit. So the day we wrote that scene, the editor and the editor's assistant, they kept messing up. There's what's called I'm forgetting. It's like where they add up all the times of all the scenes, and then you have a total running time of the show. And when I'm in the edit bay, I have to hit that mark or go below it. And I had 2 or 3 episodes in a row, I had gotten down to time, and then they told me they messed up the math, and I had to go back and find another minute.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just math, right? They're either being careful or they're not being careful. And they kept fucking up. And finally I said to them, like, I don't want to keep getting pissed at you. You keep doing the same shit. And I had just said that to them. And then we come back and we're writing the scene. I'm like, I'm putting that line in the scene. And then they didn't know I'd written that. And then like, I don't know, a month or 2 later, they're getting the footage back. And they said to me, they're like, it was like you were talking to us through the screen. And I was like, yes, I wrote that scene the day I was pissed at you guys. So, which by the way, I love them and they're all amazing at their jobs. It was like a one-time thing. But there's a million things like that. When Mike talks about his experience in feeling like with Jessica 201, he doesn't feel like he's smart. He just is who he is with his brain. That was me just talking about myself. Harvey's got a speech in 908 when he's talking about he's just trying to live his life. He thinks he's a good person, but a lot of people think he's not, and they get mad at him. That was sort of me, how I feel a lot of times. So there's many things like that. There was one other speech, Jessica, I'm trying to remember who she was talking to, but she was telling a story about when her parents split up and she got a car out of it. And all her friends thought, what a great thing. Your parents split up and you get a car. And she was like, I hated that car, right? It represented my parents splitting up. And my mother recognized that because my parents, when I was in high school, split up and got back together, and I got a car out of it and went to help with drive my sister around. And my high school friends thought, wow, your parents split up, get back together, your life is totally the same, and you get this car. And I was like, guys, like, I didn't know how to express it at the time, but like, this is the worst thing that could have possibly ever happened to me. I didn't want this car. I wanted my parents to stay together, which they ultimately did. So a lot of things like that are infinity of them in Suits.
Yeah. I always like to talk to Rob about, some of the social issues that you tackle in Suits throughout the seasons, because the show runs for a very long time, and you can kind of see the landscape of what we're going through in our country and stuff like that being mirrored in some of the show's themes. Like later on in the series, we start to even kind of have some of those Me Too conversations, with Samantha and with Katrina and some of the cases that they're dealing with. But even early on, I mean, you joked about the briefcase full of weed earlier, but it did feel like earlier in the series, like Suits took a very specific like look at the idea of like marijuana as like the big bad drug. Like, Mike, you gotta stop, you gotta be out here smoking this weed, you're gonna go to jail, you're gonna ruin your whole life. And by the end, him and Harvey are like, you want to go to the coffee shop? You want to go to the coffee stand? You want to move to Seattle? Yeah. How do you feel about that? Because Suits is kind of a time capsule in that way.
That's a really good question. All these are great questions, by the way. I do a lot of podcasts. These are really good questions.
Thank you.
Well, look, the weed thing. First of all, obviously, yeah, like you say, a time capsule, like how we felt about weed when Suits started versus now. But also, the truth is, if we were going to we couldn't. I would have probably had it be cocaine in the pilot. But they probably wouldn't have I didn't think either we had the discussions or we didn't. I don't think they would have let me, because they would have felt like that was too unlikable for Mike, right? So, because even at the time, weed was not that, it wasn't really the devil thing. So we took a little license with that. But, part of it was I had a history with that stuff. And I don't think marijuana is inherently evil, but I do think if you let it control your life, it's really going to, there are a lot of people walking around, if they never smoke pot again, their lives might change drastically for the better. Not like they're bad human beings or any of that. But then as the show went on, it was like, look, we just had some fun, and he's not addicted to it anymore and all that stuff. Also, in the other things, the Me Too, and, we took on some other issues. I never wanted Suits to be really like an issue-oriented show, because I just didn't think it was what the show wanted to be. Not that I don't care about issues, but when the writers would present me stories, I think sometimes some of them in particular wanted to solve the world's problems through a legal case in Suits, right? And in my mind, I'm like, look, these aren't real cases. They're just fiction. So even if we win a case, it's not necessarily changing the world. But my approach was more to say, let's take an issue, and instead of focusing on the issue, let's make it about our personal decisions that our people have to decide, right? So let's say Leonard Bailey, that case in, I think it was season 7 with Rachel and Jessica, like it touched on the racial inequities of people in prison, right? And it definitely, took that on and said, this is wrong. But it came down to, what are Rachel and Jessica going to do to get this human being out of prison, right? He's a man and they're women, as opposed to, they weren't taking on the entirety of the issue of wrongly convicted people. They were trying to get this human being out of prison. And that prosecutor that put him in, I think in real life, prosecutors are often this way. They're blinded. They don't want to hear that they made a mistake. So they ratcheted it up and they said, look, if you want to pursue getting him out, I'm going to pursue putting him in for the rest of his life, or giving him the death penalty. I don't remember what it was. And that puts them in this really tough decision. It's a personal decision about a human being. And that was sort of the approach we took throughout Suits.
Thank you.
One of the things that is a big part of the DNA of Suits is all of the references to TV and movies by Mike and Harvey, and it's one of the ways that they really connect. Obviously, yourself and the team of writers are probably also like very fluent in communicating in all of these references. How important was that to have that be part of the show?
Well, it's another good question. Most of the things that were in the show, I didn't think about, we need to do this, right? I don't, that's not sort of how I write. It just, when I'm having a conversation with any one of my friends, I mean, even he was my agent, he's now my manager, every once in a while he'll just say a line. I'm like, did you The other day I was driving in the car and I'm on speakerphone. You're not supposed to be on speakerphone in the car, so sorry. But I pull over because there's a siren, there's a fire truck coming. And my manager says, he just goes, pull over. And he said it just like that on the phone. And I'm like, why the fuck is he saying this? He's not hearing. I'm already pulled over. And I realized he was quoting Fletch. This is a deep quote of Fletch. And I quote the whole scene to him right. I'm like, Dennis, are you? So that's just how my life works. It's what I do. So I just put it in when like I would living life. But like a lot of things, then the writers, they'll figure out, oh, this is what he does. So they have to figure out how do they integrate that into writing the show, because they might not do it. A lot of them are younger than me. Their quotes aren't, I didn't want to put quotes in that I hadn't watched the movie. So sometimes they would pitch me some quote and I wouldn't get it or wouldn't know it or whatever it was. But so I wouldn't want to put it in. But to me, it was a huge part of the show, but it wasn't, I didn't make a decision to make it a part of the show.
Yeah, Rob and I have had a lot of fun with those references because there are references that Rob knows better than I do. And then there's references where we definitely can just like bond and like, oh yeah, I remember exactly what movie that's from, what scene it's from. And then we do callbacks to our old episodes too. So it feels very self-referential. But you go from using a lot of references in this show to eventually switching in, I think in the later seasons, we start dropping F-bombs. What's that about? Why we start cussing so hard? And why did I love every second of it?
I'll tell you what happened. Hold on, my daughter just walked in. I said she might join us for a minute. Lucy, you want to say hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Hey, Lucy.
Hi.
She notices the F-bombs. Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
What happened was Mr. Robot came on, and Mr. Robot started using fuck. So I said, if they can use fuck, we can use fuck. And that's when it started. But prior to that, they wouldn't let us. So
what season?
I think it was season.
Is it 8?
No, before 8.
Yeah, it was before 8. I think it was 7.
I
Might
think
have
it
been
was
7.
5 or 6.
Ooh.
Not 5, maybe 6.
What
It
the
was 6
fuck?
or 7.
You're wrong.
It was
Yeah.
6 or 7.
Mike went to jail in 6. They had to start using harsher language.
That
Yeah.
could be. That could be.
Yeah, so 6.
We'll say 6, but we
Yeah.
we can double check. It might have been in the middle of the season.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was trying to think if she could answer. Lucy, just if you had to pick a favorite scene, I know I'm putting you on the spot and this is hard. I should have asked you before.
Like a favorite scene or a favorite character? Just a
Ooh.
favorite scene?
Whichever.
Either one.
I've asked her favorite characters, which changed throughout the seasons.
Yeah. My favorite scenes, probably like the Lewis and Lipschitz scenes. Those are
Yeah.
really good. I love those.
And that's a lot because we're watching them now.
Mhm.
We've imitated a million Lewis Jessica scenes, right?
Yeah, that too. Like the one that's like, it's nothing like that. And then Jessica's like, then what is it? Everything you just said.
Yes,
like we
yes.
always talk about that one. Favorite character though. I always love Donna. Donna's the best. Donna's great.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
And early on, it was Rachel, though. I remember when we were
I
early
did
on
like
watching, you
Rachel,
loved
yeah.
Rachel so much.
Yeah. Who is your least favorite character and why is it Brian?
At the beginning, I really did not like Lewis, but now I'm a big Lewis fan. Lewis is a lot better now.
Yeah, we're early in the Brian days, right? We're only up to 802, so we haven't really gone through. Well, what's your problem with Brian? What's the matter with Brian?
I hate that guy.
You hate him? What do you hate about him?
I hate him because stay away from Katrina, you monster. Get away from
Oh,
her.
okay.
She deserves more than this.
Fair enough. We haven't gotten there yet. He's spoiling for you. These
I
guys
didn't say
spoil stuff.
anything. Yeah, I didn't say anything. Stay away
It's
from
fine.
Katrina,
She knows a lot of what happens. And I will say, since you guys are Survivor fans, Lucy is such a big Survivor fan that she was Jeff Probst for Halloween.
Oh, wow.
You know?
Wait, Lucy, you do know Rob was on Survivor, right? like he played Survivor. He almost won.
Very
He played
long time
twice.
ago.
Yeah.
What season? I don't remember that.
Rob is the star of Survivor the
Aaron,
Amazons, and he
Aaron,
came back
so
for All Stars.
yeah, that's my backstory. Is so I was on Survivor 6 and then Survivor All Stars, and then that was how I got involved in this whole reality TV thing, and then many years later we started the podcast.
I saw like some of the earlier seasons, but not all of them. I've seen about 25 seasons, and I'm also like in the middle of 3 at like the same time. But
At the same time?
Yeah, there's a couple that I have not seen though. I've been trying to watch Survivor All Stars, but it will not show up on like the channels that we have, so I can't watch it, and I'm mad about it. All Stars is the one with Rob and Amber, right?
It's like season 9 of Suits on Netflix.
You met Rob and Amber?
He was on the island with Rob and
I did
Amber.
more than meet them.
We'll find it. We'll find it.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, we were very excited, and our listeners were as well, to hear the Survivor reference in Suits because again, we know this guy knows all the people from Survivor.
Right, not to spoil Lucy, but so in season 9, out of nowhere, Harvey tells Donna, like, "Oh, it's I gotta watch Survivor. It's Wednesday, and he says it's a very underrated show." And people, where did that come from? Is Harvey was always a Survivor fan?
Well, it comes. This is what I'm talking about throughout the thing, that I put myself into the characters. I'm a huge Survivor fan. We watch as a family.
Yeah, I joined when I was about 7. We started. Well, I came downstairs and Mom and Dad were watching Survivor, and I was like, "What's this?" And they're like, "Survivor." So I watched the episode, and that was season 39 they were watching, and we finished that.
Not our best foot forward.
Yeah.
So we watched season 39, and then we've seen every season since. We have not finished 45 though, so
No spoilers.
Don't spoil that. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I noticed that Dad has put in of him. Like, I'm also in there. Like, I know that later Lewis has a baby, and that she's named after me. So,
Lucy,
yes.
And he says, "I want to have a boy named Cooper," which is my son, daughter named Lucy. But we put the Survivor thing in because I love Survivor. That's also why when Harvey talks about Star Trek, early in 107, I wonder if Erica Lopez, the writer of that show, I don't know if she's ever seen an episode of Star Trek, right? But sometimes I would just I'm like, look, I'm going to make Harvey. Why not give him my traits?
Yeah. And then was that part of the reason that when in season 9, when Faye comes in, that Denise Crosby is Faye?
No. Denise Crosby. I only watched the original Star Trek.
I love The Next Generation.
No, she auditioned for that role. A lot of times when you're running a show, a lot of actors, they want you to hire them off of their body of work or off of their reel, right? They don't want to audition. And I respect that. But I always wanted to I don't only want to hire, the most famous of actors. One of the things when you hire someone that's less famous, they're more believable in the role. You're not thinking they're someone else, right? You're just thinking they're Hardman, right? So at the beginning of a lot of the seasons, I would feel some pressure to hire somebody famous, a real known person. And I wasn't closed to it, but I always wanted to give the people that auditioned a chance to win the role. So with roles like Faye, she just auditioned for that and she killed it, right? And I would also say Hardman comes to mind. So many.
Daniel Hardman.
Yeah, great. And such a nice person. Paul Schulze in season 6 as Gallo. And so, yeah, a lot of, I was big on hiring off of auditions.
Yeah, I've loved a lot of the casting. Yeah, we do the Wikipedia page for everybody when we see somebody new or somebody you're kind of like, man, I kind of know this person. But you did have some huge names. I mean, Robert Zane walking around like a normal human in this show, when this is like one of the best actors I've ever seen in my life, and Wendell Pierce, I was like, man, this is crazy to have him. And then so many references to The Wire as well. I thought all of that was really well done.
Yes, no. And look, obviously Wendell I knew before, and he did not audition. We hired him for that. So sometimes we may, but a lot of people didn't know, and even still don't know Wendell's name. Like, he's a guy that you're like, you know him, but he's not like, whatever it is. I can't even think of someone. He's not a huge movie star that everyone knows his name. But he did tell me, he said he was, I don't remember when this was, but it was when the show was still on the air. He went to some Dubai or somewhere, some Middle Eastern country, and he's getting off the plane, and he says like throngs of people come at him, and they're like, Ramadan or something. I don't know. And that's when he knew how big it was. Costable told me, this is Hardman, I mean, I think it was season 3. He was engaged, in real life. Cable guy comes to his house to install some cable, but he's not there. It's his fiance. And there's a picture of him on bureau or something. And the cable guy is like, that's a bad man. So these guys, it's pretty cool. And, Neil McDonough sent me a text within a month or so ago saying thanks a lot. I can't go anywhere without being mobbed by people from, Suits fans. So it's pretty crazy.
Yes.
Now, okay, we've seen in the news that there is potentially a Suits spinoff that could be in the works. Is there anything that you could tell us about what might be in the future of Suits?
I like your look. Yes, I can speak a little bit more about it now, because up until about, I guess, a week and a half ago, the deal wasn't closed, so we were not positive it was going to go. But basically, during the pandemic, I wrote a script that was not meant to be a Suits spinoff. It was just the next thing I was going to do. But I called it like a cousin of Suits in terms of the way the characters, I write the way I write. So it's kind of the way the character's talking. But it doesn't have, every one of these things you're pointing out. I don't think there's a movie reference in the pilot. And I didn't say, okay, these are the rules that we did in Suits and Transfer. It has a Suits feel to it, Suits-esque feel to it. And, that was a number of years ago, and it was in development, and it sold, and it wasn't going to go. And then the strike happened, and then Suits, rocketed to the top of the charts. And, the executive at NBC, his name is Alex Sepiol, who he at the time was at USA. He is really the guy that sort of championed getting Suits on the air, and he has now been the champion of getting this on the air. So I'll say what I like about it is, if someone had come to me and said, make another Suits show in the same world but with different characters, I don't know, that my brain might have frozen. I don't know what I would have done with that. So this was more organic in that I came up with a show that I loved, and now we're going to integrate it into the Suits world. I think it worked out better that way. So, sort of similar to, Suits. I was an investment banker, so they were originally investment bankers, and then we had to alter it to make them lawyers. And this one, it actually originally was about a guy that was an agent, a Hollywood agent, and we changed it and made him into a lawyer. So I think both processes were better for the final product, and I'm excited about it. And there is, I am open to bringing back Suits characters into the world, but they're not there in the beginning. It's a whole new bunch of people, and obviously it's not just another kid that's a fraud coming into another law firm. So it's a different premise, and I'm very excited about it.
One of the things that was reported was that it was set in the same time frame as the events of Suits. Is that correct?
Oh, that just means it just means it takes place today, right? Meaning it's in the same world as Suits, so the Suits characters can come in and out of it. But it's not a period piece like taking place
2011. Yeah.
No. It does have a little bit of a dual. It does have a dual time frame element. So there are some flashback scenes, a little bit more than in Suits. And it's funny that you say that. Originally, the flashback period took place much earlier than Suits, just the way it worked in my head. Because again, it wasn't meant to be a Suits thing. But we've made the flashback scenes later in time now, just to make the lead character's age make a little more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But come to think of it, the flashback scenes are a similar time period to when Suits started.
Okay. The flashbacks are a very big part of Suits, and we get the first one back in season 2. When you first did that change the way that you all were telling the story of Suits?
That I don't know whose idea that was to do that episode, because what happened is in the first season I was in the writer's room quite a bit, but as you go, I end up rewriting, usually with the writer of the episode, and then as time went on with whoever was the number 2 at the time and the writer of the episode. So the writer's room is working on stories moving forward, and I'm more working on the script that we're going to shoot and editing, and then I'll come into the room and they'll pitch me stories. And I was so lucky to have, cast was amazing. I can't, Suits would not be Suits without the cast and the directors and the producers and everyone, but also the writing staff. The writing staff was so great. So many of the things we did were their idea. And when they pitched the flashback episode, I loved it so much. And it did change. It made it so that we didn't say, like with the mock trial, we did one season 1 and then we did one season 2 and 3, but then it just didn't make any more sense, so we stopped doing it. But it definitely made it so that we wanted to do more flashbacks. And it's just a way to fill out some questions that you've raised in the shooting of the show, and hey, why don't we answer that question to what they were referring to or whatever it is. And I love the episodes, and the goal was always both to tell a story in the past, give you unexpected information that you would not have known, but also propel the story in the present day forward. We wanted to do all those things in any given episode.
Yeah, I do have an unanswered question, and I know you don't have the answer to this question. I know you've done a good job
Can opener
avoiding this one. Listen, we got to talk about it. It's not that I need a definitive answer about what the can opener was. I want you. This is the exercise. Tell us if you could make up a can opener reason. Tell us what it's about in your mind, whatever imagination you got. Give us your best English can opener explanation, because every time we and Rob talked about it, it was kinky. I don't know if it's supposed to be.
I don't either. I'm not going to answer. Here's what I'm going to do. I'll tell you the story of it. We came up with it. I can't remember who it was, but I do remember Kevin Bray, who directed the Suits pilot and was our producing director the first 2 seasons, and he was going to direct that episode. And he says to me, he's like, you have to answer what they do with the can opener. He was adamant. And I was like, as usual, Kevin, you're wrong. I said to him, people don't really want to know what they do with the can opener. They want to know. And any answer I give is going to be unsatisfying. Plus, I don't have one, and I'm too lazy to think of one. And then I think it was wasn't it later episodes? It was Rick Maragi, again, the one that had the idea for this Lewis and the Wig, who he embellished it. He's like, I'll get the something and the thumbtacks and the
thumbtacks and the whipped cream, yeah.
And the whipped cream. So that's obviously implying, the whipped cream at least, right? So we try. Here's one of the reasons I don't want to think about it is we put in so many things that's how am I going to come up with what they did with all that shit? Yeah. Some of it's going to be dirty, but other stuff is not dirty. So I can't answer. But what I will say is the reason I know I was right and Kevin was wrong is you're asking me this question 12 years later. And no matter what we'd have come up with, nobody would be asking that question or talking about it anymore.
That's true.
Everybody's made such a big deal about ChatGPT over the last year and a half. If these people only knew about the Donna, right?
Yes, exactly. That was another one. That was a little bit like the Harvey wig. I was like, is this nuts? but we did it. I'm glad we did. It was a big swing, and it was it was wacky, but it was fun.
Yeah. What about the choice to keep the will they won't they with Harvey and Donna in the chamber for so long?
So
Because
long.
yeah, I was on Tumblr back in the day. Okay, I saw the fan cams, I saw the montages, the Darby, the all this. I seen it all, and
Yeah.
then it just feels like if you're along for the ride, if you tap out early enough, you might not even get the answer to your question about will they won't they with Darby. So what was that decision like? Because I think people were clamoring for the Darby relationship at a very early point in
Oh, they
the
were
series.
clamoring. Yeah, big time clamoring. Look, that decision, that's interesting. I mean, it had a lot. Most of the time, my decision, I'm going to come up with answers, but I am not going to say that those answers are really exact. I made the decision, then I might figure out in retrospect why I made it. But, first of all, some of it was fun for me to play with the fans, right? They want it to happen so badly. I would get threats, not like physical bodily threats, but some nasty tweets and things like that. And I was like, well, fuck that. I'm not going to do this just because you want me
Spite
to.
you.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. No, I'm not. I didn't do it to spite them. Not do it to spite them. But I'm definitely not going to do it just because they want me to. I also felt like, unlike probably a lot of the people that are going to end up hearing this, I felt like if we got them together too soon, it would just kind of take the air out of the bubble, right? I'm not incredibly interested in watching, I'm going to say, scenes of domestic bliss between Harvey and Donna. That's not what Suits is to me. It's just not. And I know, my God, I also think if we'd have just had a camera in their apartment and had them ad-lib an hour a week for 10 episodes in a row, Darby fans would be like, you only gave us 10, you couldn't give us 15. There's no satisfying a certain element. So, but I will say this, when they did get together, it was not planned going into that season to have them get together at 8/16. By that time, I knew they were going to be together, but we were talking about the finale. We would always end up writing the finale up in Toronto just before we were going to shoot it. It wasn't written, and I would have one or two writers go there with me, and we'd be working really hard. And we were working late one night, three of us, and we were just in some discussion about just Donna. I can't remember how it was going, but it was Thomas and Donna, right? And it was what's going to happen? And one of the writers wanted, Ethan really was pushing for something, and Genevieve was there, and we were just having this discussion. And all of a sudden, I was like, what if Harvey sleeps with Donna? And at that point, I think Genevieve had gone, and Ethan was really pushing for something else. And he was like, I could tell he liked it, but he didn't understand how it would happen. And I took him through, it was the result of 2 hours of discussion about something. So it just happened. It really was not planned. And, we did it. And then, I'm glad that we did it when we did. I'm glad that we did it earlier than I would have anticipated. But I was never going to just do it just because people are clamoring for it. I can't. I try to tell the fans this. I don't think they care. That I have to make the show for me, right? I have to make it what I want it to be, because the second I start guessing what you want it to be, well, then I don't know what I'm doing, right? I have to take a poll anytime I want to do anything. So that's sort of how I make gut reactions based on kind of what I want to do, I guess.
Aaron, can you talk about some of the challenges that you had getting towards the end of season 7 where, okay, so that Megan and Patrick are going to be leaving, but the show is going to continue to go on, and how you had to try to both write those two out of the show and then pivot to what the show is going to be for the future beyond season 7.
Yeah. I mean, and also we knew that we were going to try to embed the season 7 finale is really like the Pearson pilot in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And which, by the way, one of the things I was very disappointed about with Pearson was we did what I would call an embedded pilot season 7 finale. Pearson should have aired when season 8 of Suits aired, but they took such a long time to make the decision that it didn't air for another year later. And, you know, you could point to a lot of reasons why maybe Pearson wasn't as successful as we'd all wanted it to be. But I personally think the biggest reason was you made a pilot, you showed it to the audience, and you waited over a year to show them the next episode. Like, why would you do that? But that aside, yeah, you know, it wasn't the hugest challenge. I'll say this. If Megan was going to leave, I made the decision that I'm like, look, I think this marriage is going to work out. It just seemed like it was going to work out. She didn't know it. I didn't know it. But I'm like, I'm going to bet on her happiness. It's a lot easier to undo her leaving at the last minute than to have to come up with her leaving at the last minute. So I made that decision. And then Patrick told me about his decision to go. He gave me a lot of time, you know. I didn't want Patrick to go. He just felt it was best for him at the time, but it did make it easier for me from a writing standpoint because keeping Mike without Rachel, I didn't want to break them up. I didn't want her to get hit by a car. So the fact that they left at the same time, it actually made it easier for me. And then in between seasons, well, you know, we ended 7, I think, you know that Zane is going to be a part of the front. You know, we knew we needed to bring some new blood in. Katherine Heigl, Katie Heigl she had just separately reached out. She was just a huge fan of the show and wanted to be on it. And, well, she had actually reached out originally about doing another show for her, not Suits, related. And I was too under the gun. I'm like, I got this Pearson spinoff. I got Suits. I can't do it. And she was like, well, I'm a huge fan of the show. And I'm like, well, would you consider, you know, being on it? I forget exactly how they went. So once we knew she was going to come on, it just felt like we got Zane coming in. We know, Amanda Schull Katrina had her own series 12 Monkeys. That was ending. We could bring her on. Dule was now, you know, ramped up to series regular. So we just felt like it wasn't that difficult to me, you know. For fans, they had to get used to, you know, Lucy and I, like I said, we're on episode 802. In the middle of episode 801, she's like, wait a minute, we're never going to see Mike and Rachel again? and so for fans, I can see it. It's hard to get used to. Yeah. But hopefully they did.
It's pretty cool. I know even I'm kind of with Lucy on this one because you know, when Jessica leaves, we kind of wean us off of Jessica. You know, you get bits and pieces of Jessica popping in. And so when you're like, oh, Mike and Rachel are leaving, we'll probably see a little bit of them. But as we know, Rachel had other obligations that she just could not be present for. But yeah, keeping Jessica around even after they're leaving the firm, I thought was such a cool choice because like you said, you were trying to roll out Pearson, but it did help people kind of just like wean off of Jessica as opposed to just having her like snatched away in such a violent way, you know, with her being disbarred and all this other stuff. So I really like those choices you made. And even with bringing in the new people, Katherine Heigl, Dule Hill, I think that the cast in the very end was very strong. And had you been doing something completely separate, you could have with that group from the SLWW. You know?
Yes. Well, look, and also because Dule had already been on the show for a year, so he wasn't jarring in season 8. Obviously, Robert Zane, you know, came in 213, Zane versus Zane, so he'd been there for a long time. Katrina had been there, so you were bringing in people on a more regular basis, but they weren't shocking. It was just Samantha, which is great. You want to bring in some new blood, so to speak. And look, Gina leaving, you know, look, if it had been up to me, none of the original 6 would have ever left, right? I never was going to get rid of her.
Yeah.
Gina, towards the end, I think it might have been in the beginning of season 5, living in Toronto was just too hard on her. You know, it was just taking too big of a toll on her life. So she came to me and she said, you know, I'd like to leave. And I said, I totally get it. I understand. Let's talk to the studio. And the studio was like, how about, you know, they did the arrangement. So we had a long lead time for Gina, and we built in that she would come back. You know, we built that into her. She was willing to do that, very helpful. Long before Pearson was contemplated, right? because she left 6:10 was her last episode, and we did the Pearson was contemplated a year later. So, but that was the first like, okay, we can survive even if one of the people leaves. But I when on my rewatch, I miss Jessica a lot in those later years. I really do. Like I said, like her Lewis scenes, when Lucy was referring to, there's some scene that Lewis walks in and he's on a jihad about something. And he says, I can't remember what he asked for. And Jessica says, I know what the problem is. You found out how much Harvey pays Donna's salary and blah, 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 and you're here for that. And he's like, it's not like that. And she goes, well, then what is it? And he's like, everything you just said. And that's just classic. There's a million Jessica Lewis scenes like that. I missed her so much. And also her relationship with Harvey was so great. And Mike and Rachel, towards the end. And I felt like Mike and Rachel, at least so much of them was together. So when they left, you weren't seeing one of them without the other one. Though you were, obviously, Mike and Harvey. That was hard. They were all hard as watching them leave. They were all hard.
Aaron, I really appreciate you spending so much time talking with us about this. It's been super fun. Is there anything else, like, are there common questions or anything that you want to let people know?
I'm just trying to think. I mean, what just pops into my head when you say that is, by the way, here, let me see if you can see this. This is what I have in my office. I don't really have much suit stuff.
Yes.
In the house, but the one thing I have is this. That's the cast, the original 6 signed. It's a signed, poster from them. So I keep them here in the office. But so what was made me think of was like, I got my start as a production assistant on Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh wow.
And Phil Rosenthal was so great showrunner. And he said to me at some point, I ran into him, and he said, every great show is about a family, whether it's a naturally constituted family or an office family or whatever. And like, I felt like Suits, the show on screen was a family and off screen we're a family.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we didn't fight, bicker, whatever it was sometimes, but like, the resurgence was so great just because, it made us reconnect, reforge our bonds. And, just for fans to know, like, it really was a family. And I love all the people that worked on the show over the years. I guess that's it. That's what pops into my mind.
Have you ever been mudding?
Only 14 or 15 times. No, that's another one. We wrote that. We were up in Toronto. We were under the gun. And we had to have Lewis doing something. And I wanted him to be at the gun range, right? Mm-hmm. Because he'd been at the gun range. And John Cowan, the writer of that episode, he was really anti-gun. And I was like, come on, it's just Lewis going to a gun range. He's like, he really didn't want to do it. And they came up with mudding. These two bozos came up with mudding. And I was like, this is the greatest idea I've ever heard. And it just, I don't even know if mudding exists or not.
It does. We looked it up. I've been trying to get Rob to come mudding with me for months now.
I don't want to go.
He will not
there's no mud club though, right? I know people mud.
Yeah, I think there's mud clubs now.
Indoor mud clubs?
I'm thinking, yeah.
You invented it.
Stuff in California.
Started the craze.
I said, yeah, but Rob will not do it with me. So I was like, okay, if Aaron Korsh said he did it, maybe Rob will do it. But
I did it. I did it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
All the time. We'll go together as a family.
I'll tell you what, Gabriel did it once. I was not there. He didn't like it. I think it's like very dehydrating or something. And he was like, I'm never doing it again. And I'm like, Rick does it so many times.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Well, Aaron, is there anything that people can check out from you? I know you're active on Twitter.
Yes. I think A Korsh 9, KORSH 9 on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, but I never go on it. Mm-hmm. Facebook, I just keep for private.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's
And
it.
I know
You
you're
know
going to
what?
unfollow us because of all the Survivor spoilers.
Yes,
but
yes, just because-
please, yeah, keep in touch.
I will keep in touch, and I'll maybe check you guys out sometimes. The thing is, we watch Survivor as a family,
Yeah.
so we're always behind. And oh my
We
God,
get it.
guys, you ruined it! You ruined the season for me.
Listen. Go back and watch Survivor season 6 as a family, and then you can
I don't know if
DM us
Lucy's
your
old
questions
enough.
for Rob.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
stop it.
she can do it. She can handle it. Season
I think
6.
I think there was some mudding in that season. Yeah, some premature mudding also. Yeah.
Premature mudding for
Oh,
sure.
and listen, that's one of my favorite scenes when they talk about the premature modification. Oh my God, I forgot about that scene. So much fun.
Yeah. That's a wild one. It is a really fun time with Jessica and Lewis and Harvey in that episode. Well, Aaron, thank you for making the time. We loved going back and watching all of Suits, and I know that the listeners appreciated hearing from you and talking about it with us here today.
All right, guys, I really appreciate it. And look, I came across your stuff on Twitter. I'm like, that's a real big thing to watch all those episodes that quickly. I really appreciate it. I mean, anybody that loves the show, I really appreciate it. I know sometimes
I get that from your social media also.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like I'm being contentious and I'm really just trying to be silly, but I really appreciate it. I love that you guys did this, and thank you so much.
All right. Aaron, thank you so much. And of course, if you're just checking this out for the first time, check out all of Suits yourself. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.